Greetings from the Long Island Sound podcast. Welcome to the show. Please rate, review, and comment on the show, and call our listener line and leave a message for our guests. Dial 631-800-3579. All right, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Long Island Sound podcast, where we explore the muse and the music, from the North Shore to the South Shore, from New York City to the Hamptons, navigating the wellspring of original music from singer-songwriters and musicians from Long Island, New York. Hi, I'm Steve Yusko from GigDestiny.com. Stay tuned as we explore the Long Island Sound. Linda Sussman is a Long Island, New York artist and an award-winning songwriter whose music embraces folk, alternative folk, and blues, and whose songs span universal themes such as love, heartache, triumphs, and social justice. Linda's vocals are backed by her strong rhythm and fingerstyle guitar with a touch of slide. We'll delve into her newly released album called Shake It Loose today. Have a listen to the title track. was introduced to today's guest through some mutual friends, and I'm excited to bring you along on a journey to discover her music. Linda Sussman brings us to the crossroads where folk meets the blues. Listening intently to her songs these past few days, an image of a loving mother teaching her children through song continually pops up in my mind. Imagery aside, I found myself engrossed in her lyrics. Her lament on societal issues and a call for justice implore us to seek answers and drive us to action as we search for hope in difficult times. I am enamored at independent artists like Linda who speak truth to power with the subtleties of a whispering chorus that will knock you off your chair and onto your feet. Linda Sussman tours as a solo artist, but also is accompanied by her stellar band, the Linda Sussman Collective. Her music can be heard internationally on stations across the US, Canada, the UK, Europe, Israel, Australia, and elsewhere. Welcome to the Long Island Sound Podcast, Linda. Good to have you here.
Good to be here, Steve.
Yeah, what's so interesting is it's just a blessing to get introduced to what I call the wellspring of talent on Long Island and the diversity that's there. But then I'm also called to kind of focus on my guests' music kind of intently. And I knew of your music and I had an initial impression. And then when I got into the lyrics, I'm like, wow, there's really powerful stuff that you deliver out there. And I want to thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for listening intently. There's so much that, as a musician, you try to say through your music. And so when it reaches people, that's what we're meant to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what's neat about, I would say, the independent artist. You're unafraid to do that. Yeah, you're unafraid to speak that truth. Where I would say maybe this is a generalization on my part, where some celebrities who should be called to doing these things are afraid to affect their audience in a negative way and lose the dollars, so to speak. So I'm glad you do what you do.
Thank you. It's interesting because, I grew up on folk music. So that's like really embedded in my core. But, these days I'm sure a lot of artists and I'm sure a lot of actors and people of prominence, really have to think twice about how they put themselves and their truth out there, because these are really scary times we're living in.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this we'll talk about everything and anything. And this was a very difficult week that happened. And I'm happy to talk about that. I also want to talk about what's interesting. It's kind of, you can look at, I think we're close in age. We can look at, I grew up on folk music, Neil Young and Bob Dylan and all the greats. And then things changed at Newport. I don't know if they blame Bob Dylan for bringing in electric, but I think it's all good. But I think there's that resurgence. And to be honest with you, I found this through you, this resurgence of what I didn't even know they still exist. I'm a folkie, but I think that's great. And although it's a statement on your website, where the folk meets the blues, I was fortunate enough, everyone, to get a preview of Linda's forthcoming album. And let me tell you, there's some great energy in there where really it is folk meets the blues and just some really great music. But we'll just tease about that and talk about that in the future. We're also interested on, your startup, your songwriting process, and we'll get into that. But I want to touch on what we heard coming into the show was Shake It Loose Today. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit, and then we can jump into other things.
That is the title track of my new release, and that just a little plug here, that does get released on July 1st across all streaming. But the impetus for that song was I wrote it. Obviously everything new is being written during the pandemic because these are the times we're in, and I really felt like I had reached a low. So many people had reached their lows. And how do we work ourselves back up from that? And then I started thinking, well, it's not even how the pandemic weighs on us and changes our lives, but any difficult situation. And most times we ourselves are who block the way to get back up. So I wrote this song about, we've got to push through the fog, really find a way to move through. And, the refrain is push through the fog when your chips are down. Move your woes to the far side of town. Get on your feet, step out of your way, make some noise, shake it loose today. And I really wanted this song to be loud and all the energetic. I mean, I did when I first put it up on YouTube, it was just me and my guitar, and that's fine too. It has its own different energy. But then when we were recording it, it was Kevin Kelly, bass player on it, who said, I really hear this with a real solid kick. And that's when we brought in Sean Murray, and he went over to Mike Nugent's studio and recorded. And then Mike put some stunning guitar on this. So there you have, I'm on you'll hear me intro or be at the head of the song, the top of it when it starts. And that's me on acoustic guitar. And that's the deal with Shake It Loose Today.
When you think about it, not to get, and I always get a little philosophical, so I'm going to apologize right off the bat. But if you think about everybody who went through the pandemic and real isolation, and you were isolated, we all have concerns about our health, and you have that isolation, you can get really driven down. Not all of us can, quote, pick ourselves by our own bootstraps, but I think music certainly, and pointing to just what happened with that song. You created it within a confinement, let's say, and then you pulled in other musicians to put it together. It had its voice as a solo acoustic, but then brought in the energy. And that's, at least that's the vibe that I get of now, where we see hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel, at least as far as pandemics go, of, what? I'm going to smell the roses, and I can't do it by myself, and I need to find those tools and people that can shake it loose for me today.
And just to state, it really is most times ourselves, who keep us down. And it's like, hey, stop thinking, just, sort of like when get loud and step out of yourself.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I'm my own millstone around my neck. Right. And when we can recognize that, we can move along. Hey, why don't we do this? Because look, by the way, everybody, just for those who are new to the podcast, we put a lot of effort into the chapter mark. So anyone that we're speaking about, Kevin Kelly, Mike Nugent, you'll see links for that, as well as lindaSussman.com, I think is your website. Yep. So please go there. You'll find a wealth of information there, and Linda's backstory and her events and all those things. You can also go to the Gig Destiny site, and we'll list Linda's events, upcoming events, and the album release there as well. But I'm very interested, because I'm a horrible musician. I'm an okay singer. Don't ask my wife. And I'm way too loud. But let me put it to you this way. Where did you find the courage or the strength, first to write your own music and then to go play it out in public?
You're taking me back like decades. You really are. So how did I really start? So, I've been playing music and guitar and singing forever. I think I picked up the guitar at 10 or 11. That was after a couple other instruments. And when I fronted a cover folk rock band in college, and then I came back to the New York metro area where I, was born and raised. And I got together with a couple folks, and we formed a trio. It was an all women's trio. And it was with them that I started writing my own music, and we started incorporating those songs into our playlists. And, I felt driven to write my own material. I had played for years, doing gigs, doing, covers, and that's fine. And, that's totally great. And we learned so much from that. But I felt like I had a lot to say. And so I really hunkered down and started writing. And that was a long time ago, and I haven't stopped.
All right, we won't say how many years, but so let me ask you this. I struggled with, quote, finding my voice, what key to sing in, just from my ignorance of music. Did you find your voice early on, and where has it gone from when you were in college to where you are today? And I don't mean your physical voice, but the way with with which you sing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I did sing with a lot of choral groups. So I was, more
Okay.
on the more classical side in terms of voicing. But, I was always, like I said, a big folky and folk rock follower. And, those were the covers I did, Jackson Browne and the Eagles and, lots of Joni Mitchell. And
Great.
I would say in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I really have allowed myself to explore my lower register and really sit back in my voice and not push beyond the outside of it too much or my head voice. And so it's been great. It's if I stop learning, if I stop pushing, if I stop experimenting, then I feel like I'm just stagnating. And if I'm not keeping it interesting for me, how can I keep it interesting for listeners? That's just not going to happen.
Great
then
point.
They're just going to tune in and hear the same old thing. So, with each of the albums I've done 4 in the past 5 years. I feel like I have definitely grown and taken my both guitar playing, which is all self-taught, my guitar playing and my vocals. I keep pushing myself and expanding and doing new things and finding more freedoms and just relaxing more in my voice.
Nice. It's interesting. What I found is once you start playing with other people, and if you were open to, it's not easy because we're all, at least I'm, as you can see, hypercritical of myself. Once you're open to, hey, what do you hear? Asking other people, what do you hear about my voice, what I'm saying? And then you're open to say, okay, yeah, I'll take it in that direction, this direction. I'm doing too much or too little of this. And that's where I think it's so important to listen. Now, you work with Kevin Kelly, you work with Mike Nugent, and yet you're doing this also when you're confined during COVID, doing it virtually, which I think is great, really great about technology that you can piece things together and get out there. Why don't we do this? Let's just take a quick break. And when we get back into it, we're going to get into some other things. We'll leave a little cliffhanger for everybody. We'll be right back, everybody.
Are you a singer-songwriter who wants to take your music to the next level and you need some professional musicians and really that expertise to help you along? Well, check out Melts in Your Ears Studio. It's Mike Nugent's studio. If you like what you've heard here today, Mike's the guy who can make the connections, put the tracks together, and give you a quality product. Check it out.
Hey, everybody, we're back after that short break with Linda Sussman. And Linda, I got to ask you this. In reading your bio, you're a solo artist when you go out there, and yet you've collaborated. Kind of tell me how that process came about for you.
Yeah, so I have played a lot solo, though I was fronted a cover band in college. Many of us can say that. And then I actually, after college, I hooked up with these 2 women players, one on jazz guitar and one on piano and flute. And we formed a trio called Choice. And those were such great days. And so we played a lot. That was through, I guess, 80s, the 90s. And then I really, we kind of split. Lisa on keyboard, she moved out of state, and Peggy and I held down the fort for a couple of years, and then I went solo. But then I actually hit a wall. I think it was about 2005, where aging parents needed a lot of caretaking, and that just took over my life. And I had my own health issues. For folks out there who might deal with the same, I deal with a autoimmune condition called psoriatic arthritis. So that presented a lot of problems for me, attacking my joints, etc. Not good for a guitarist. But it was that and dealing with caretaking of aging parents. And so at about 2005, I left all things music. I just had no energy or the ability at that point.
Sure.
And so I would just stare longingly at my guitars, collecting dust in the corner of my room.
Right.
And it's like, because I am a guitarist and a singer, when I'm not doing what I love to do, which is music, I mean, that is so much of who I am and has always been since I'm a kid. And, when you're not doing that, and even though my days were completely filled with caretaking and my focus was elsewhere, I just had this hole in me
Sure.
that felt like was dying. But, I had to keep my priorities straight, which I did. And I would do the same thing again in a heartbeat. And like I said, I was dealing with trying to get myself on track in terms of medically for myself.
Right.
And it took a good, we went, my spouse and I, 4 parents, nearly successively, one after another.
Wow.
And that was over a period of like 9 or 10 years. And we had to do a lot of caretaking for each one. And it was one at a time. And it was over a very long stretch of time. And then in about 2016, I decided, I had myself back on track, and we had gotten through what we needed to get through. And all of our parents had passed, and I just was longing to play again.
Sure.
And here I am, I hadn't sung, I hadn't played. I was, dust in places in the crevices of my
dust in the throat too, right?
Exactly. I was, because your voice is a muscle.
Sure.
And just like any muscle or an athlete, you have to keep it pliable and supple. And if you're not really singing and using it the way you should be using it, it kind of atrophies.
Sure.
Thank God for open mics. And I have to give a shout out here to Toby Tobias.
Oh, yes.
Another great singer-songwriter and a lover of original music. And he ran an open mic of all originals. And I was like, I am going to get myself down there, no matter what it takes.
Oh, wow.
And I finally took myself, and I think I was shaking at the time. And I have so much history playing. But after that whole stretch and not, I think I picked up my guitar for a week before going down.
Wow.
And I said to my spouse, I'm out of here. I'm going. I committed to myself. I'm doing this. Bye. I'll see you later. And I haven't stopped since. So
that's great.
Yeah.
What's interesting? There's this term that they say everything's a blessing, even though the sacrificial times. We shared this privately. We were both in the desert of healthcare and doing the right thing.
Right.
Which is difficult, becoming the caretaker of the people who took care of you.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of nuances and stuff like that. But you did it, and you sacrificed what you love for whom you love, which is the thing to do.
Right.
But then you look at, okay, now you're backed up, and now you have that drive that's been pent up.
Exactly.
To launch yourself out there. And, it's almost like when you leave college, or like I didn't finish college and I went back for studies after a long time. I was absolutely frightened like you, like, can I do this? Do I have the chops to do this anymore? I'm out of practice and out of whack.
Right.
I'm very, very proud that you did it and that you're delivering what you need today.
Yeah.
You did it at a time when you didn't know what was up or down.
That's right. But I have to say that, when I commit to something, I really commit to something. And when I went down to play for the first time after, I think it was really 11 years, and I decided, oh my God, the minute I started singing, there's something about and don't think I'm crazy, and people listening, maybe someone can relate to this.
Okay.
But when I sing, there is this like air that fills my core that is just so opening and soothing to me that when I'm not singing and really singing and having that air move through, I feel like I'm dead inside.
Wow.
And so when it's like I call it my comeback or my resurgence. And after I went to that first open mic, I was like, I was committed, with everything in my being. And I really hit it hard in terms of, I am not letting this go because this is in my DNA. This is who I am. I have lost so much time, but that's okay. Like you said, it was for the right reasons, except dealing with my health, but I got through that as well. And I'm on track and I'm on a good course, and I've
good
been.
for you.
Yeah. So not without some bumps.
Music must be the best therapy for you, really, if you think about it, as far as keeping active and that sort of thing. I want to switch gears for a moment, though.
Yeah.
In that, talking about the trio you were in, Choice, there are struggles that, as a male, that I would not run into, that females run into in music. Let's touch upon that. And before we jump into that, I want to throw some kudos out to Rory Kelly, who was my first female guest, who you know, and she's been a guest on. By the way, Linda and Josie Bello have a show on Facebook, and you'll find the link in the chapter marks called Song Break.
Yep.
They do a great job in speaking with all sorts of artists. I want everyone to check that out. But Rory busted my chops. Rory Kelly, by the way, is Kevin Kelly's daughter. Kevin is a great studio producer, I guess you could say.
Yep.
And she's like, you got to get more gals on here, you know. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And she introduced me to so many great people. I just interviewed Ann O'Rourke, who'll be just before your podcast episode gets out, and a wonderful group of people. So,
yeah. Well, thank you, Rory. And I have to say that didn't go unnoticed by me as well.
Oh, thanks.
But,
yeah. I actually saw Rory last night. I went to Katie's in Smithtown because
the USB,
WUSB, and this. I actually went out late. I stayed out past 10 o'clock, which for a 6-year-old guy that's my bedtime, everybody. And that's why I have a little whiskey tenor voice, as my wife said this morning. I hear a little whiskey tenor in your voice. Anyway, tell me about being a female musician, what you're up against, how do you overcome it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I'm sure it's different for everyone. But what I experienced was people. I actually didn't have too much trouble getting gigs, so I was blessed on that front. But there, is a whole school or a whole line of thought, I guess, that women should just sing and they're not taken seriously as musicians or songwriters. And there's a lot to break through on that front. And, we were talking during the break that it took a lot of courage from me personally when I started playing again, and I knew immediately I wanted to make another album. And that was my first of 4 in the 5 years. I'd recorded 2 projects prior to that, way back, but those were just solo. But it took a lot of courage for me to approach players, and I wanted players who could add a whole lot. And it took a lot for me to approach them because, there's all this self-doubt that we're taught as girls playing instruments. You kind of just do what you do and you leave like the leads and the fills and all the fancy stuff to the guys, and I think we're taught differently. There's just, the socialization about how girls grow up as musicians. There's just so much about just be a singer or, take a back seat or,
be the backup singers. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I decided, I wasn't going to, I never was really pushed around. And like I said, I always was lucky in landing gigs. But I had always recorded solo, and I never had really top players playing with me and collaboratively. And so it was, I never knew Mike Nugent. I was introduced to him and Richie Guerrero and Cosmo Millardi.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Those were the 3 musicians who I approached at one of their gigs it was with Toby. And I went up to Richie after and let him know who I was and that I wanted to make an album, and would he add percussion? And he's like, sure, let's hear what you have, let's get together or send me whatever. And that gave me enough self-assurance that, he didn't just send me away, oh, little girl, go sit in the corner. And, he didn't know me from a hole in the wall.
Sure.
And then I got up courage to, on the same night, approach Mike and Cosmo, and they're just such great players, and playing with people, who just are, and Kevin Kelly on bass. They are just such wonderful players. And I feel like they've helped to elevate me because not that they sit with me and teach me, but just hearing them somehow, it just brings out, what I'm doing. So so there's been a lot of expansion, a lot of learning that I've done. If you keep yourself open and don't be afraid, to approach other people. And, we are so conditioned as girls and women, to think of ourselves one way. And once we step out of that,
The world opens up for you.
Yeah.
And, I found that with the musicians and the singer-songwriters that I've met on this podcast. Let me tell you, everyone has been so kind to me. I'm just a knucklehead who knows a little bit about music. And they're very generous in their giving, especially Mike. Mike Nugent is my guitar teacher. He probably wouldn't admit that, but if you heard me play. I'm joking. But he's very generous. And as you were talking about being a female lead and out there, what struck my mind were the icons in music who kind of broke through that glass ceiling. One person who came to mind was Melissa Etheridge.
Right. And Bonnie Raitt.
Bonnie Raitt, of course, and who I love and went to see at Forest Hills is Brandy Carlisle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Brandy's backed up by twin brothers. And it was just that image. It's just an image for me. It was just like, yeah, she's the real deal.
Yeah. But, if you look back, when we were growing up, when you look back, there were really just a handful of women artists. There was, Judy, if you weren't Joan Baez, Judy Collins, Joni Mitchell, or a very few others, it was so male dominated, and it still is male dominated.
Absolutely. Right.
I look at gig, rosters of places on the island, and it's mostly male groups, and it could be because that's who they're booking, or it could be that women groups, female groups are not going for the same gigs and places. So, it could be anything. I don't want to say it's one way or the other, but it's just interesting, the landscape that's out there, and it depends how people want to share their music. And a lot of the bigger places, they do want bands, cover bands. So here I am, I've kind of put my playing covers to the side, but I do sprinkle them in every now and then. I'm going to be playing the Northport Farmers Market, and I'll do a mixture. But mostly I just want to play my music. That's I'm writing music. I want it to be heard.
Well, if you think about the quarantine, and as things are starting to get released, there were venues who could not do bands and could only do solo or duo acts. In fact, I remember seeing a trio where they had to swap in the third person, like swap them out,
Yeah.
And it was interesting. So there was that window of time to get that exposure out. But you bring a good thing to light. And really, the good thing is, get out there, go after these things, to claim your pedestal and get your music out there. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about the song "These Walls." If you can touch on that a bit, and then we'll have everybody get a listen to it.
Sure. So "These Walls" was the title track of my, I'm having trouble keeping track now, of my previous album, the one I released during the pandemic in 2021. And I started writing it about, just observing what people were doing in the early days of the pandemic, and giving a shout out to the resilience of people. These walls may talk, these walls may cry. How people, future generations, are going to look back on this period of time. I have a verse in there about all the dance videos that were popping up, on YouTube and elsewhere. But I end with a metaphor about the strength of a spider's web. And I liken that to just the strength of people. And, we know how strong that silk is, every ladder in the web. And I talk about how, there's one ladder that was torn, but all the rest stayed taut, and how we find places in ourselves to get that strength to keep ourselves going. And that's really what These Walls, the name of it, the title of it, and of the album was, my perceptions about the world around me at that time.
Great. All right. Let's take a listen, everyone, to These Walls. I'll be right back after the song.
These walls may talk, these walls may cry, like paint peeling up from the underside. Stories hidden within the cracks. What'll they tell us when we look back? kitchen. There was singing from down the hall, but kids being kids wouldn't sit for an hour. Lights are fancy, taking them to the stars. Water won't wash away my tears. Water won't wash away my tears. Water won't wash away my tears. Water won't wash away my spider's web designed for strength. Each woven strand spun of silk and lace. One ladder torn, for the rest stayed taut and showed the world how hard she'd fought. Water won't wash away my tears. 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 These walls may talk, these walls may cry, like paint peeling up from the underside. Stories hidden within the cracks. What'll they tell us when we look back?
Hey, Linda, that's a great song, These Walls. And you know what?
Thanks.
I invite people to go to your website, lindasussman.com, because you put the lyrics up there and,
Yeah.
and dive into the lyrics and digest them. There's a lot of great lessons in all of your songs, to be honest with you. Now, when I speak to different artists, the one thing I hate to do is try to pigeonhole you into a genre. You know, it almost seems confining to me. Maybe that's corporate America that likes to say, okay, what are you?
Yeah.
Wait, are you Americana? Are you? I don't even know what Americana is. Although I've run into Americana, you know.
Yeah, that's a very loose term.
Loose term. Yeah. I'm American, and I sing. Yeah, I'm Americana. so tell me how you may define yourself and your style and your progress.
Yeah, so I try not to put myself in a box like you're just saying, you know, but like I said, I did grow up. I was very much a folk, you know, I was entrenched in folk music. But over the past, 5 years since I've been putting out these albums, I have really broaden my scope and to keep things interesting for myself. And also because, I do run into some tricky spots periodically with my finger joints because of my psoriatic arthritis. And so in my past, I remembered, hey, I played a lot of Joni Mitchell songs in open tunings. So I started to experiment with different open tunings on the guitar again, and a whole world opened to me. And in doing that, also different tempos and different styles opened to me. So I think it was my Pass It On Down 2019 album where it was like my crossover album where I really moved into I don't know what style blues. I hear from all different people what style I'm playing. And I'm like, no, I'm just playing whatever I play. Call it what you want.
Just call it good. Just call it
good. Exactly. Just listen to it, please.
Right.
And that's the first album that I put some blues on of my own.
That's nice.
And that really, I just love playing in a more kind of, sometimes more swampy blues, sometimes folk blues, sometimes jazzy blues, like Honey, We Gonna Fly, which I know you're going to cue up in a bit. Yeah, I just, I don't want to be boxed in, but it does pose a problem, I have found, when I am reaching out to radio stations and hosts and finding programs that are broad enough to encompass all styles that I play, because I am not, it's hard to pigeonhole me. So yeah. I am not a folk player. I guess broadly I'm the category I seem to fall in is alternative folk. So those are the radio programs I reach out to, but they're not easy to find. What's easy to find are Americana, country, folk, rock, but I'm more on the like Ani DeFranco kind of, or Indigo Girls, the more, indie something.
Sure.
indie folk, indie rock, whatever.
That's where I would say the commercial aspects of music fall into. I need to throw you into a silo so I can know where to pitch you. Okay.
Right.
That's where I think that comes into play. You look on Linda's website, you'll see all the radio stations and the countries that are playing your music. That's the coolest thing to me.
Yeah, it's great to see.
You're being played internationally. But on the other side of it, if you think about the generation coming up behind us that don't listen to radio stations per se,
right,
but listen to their Spotify playlist, their Apple playlist, or whatever. And this is a little pet peeve of mine, is the AI aspect of, oh, you listen to Jackson Browne, then you must like this. Or if I happen to listen to Irish music, I'm like, oh my God, all right, I like Irish music, but not 24/7. And someone's making that decision for me. I hate when people make decisions for me.
Yeah, all that auto-generated, oh, you like this, so all these cookies. And
once in a while I'll find it a different kind of spice. But I'm a big fan of WFUV, the Fordham radio station, which took me out of the pop genre, which is a blessing, and opened my eyes to other music that I'd never be introduced to. And that's the fun. That's the journey. That's the fun part. What I found interesting, and I equate music to food in a way, in that I think my wife threw the paprika out because I used it on like too much stuff. It's my Hungarian background. But in regards to you being open to what you're approaching, Linda, is you've kind of opened up the closet and you'd say, oh, let me try this spice. Mike, do you play dobro? Oh, that would be good. And getting that influence. And Mike categorizes himself as more of a blues guy, although he's got a mix of jazz and all these.
Right.
Mike adds spice to every song I've ever heard him on. Which
he has quite the talent. I feel so blessed to have him, playing on my albums and playing out with me periodically. He's just awesome.
When I go to Mike's house, he'll hey, take a listen to this. Hey, look at that. Or
he's always so jazzed.
He is jazzed up and a humble guy. I think there was a critic who spoke about one of your songs and equated Mike's playing on your song to Mark Knopfler, as I get the marbles out of my mouth. And he was just jazzed up about that. He goes, wow, look what somebody said, and he would just do that in private conversation. He wouldn't blast that all over the world. That's the kind of guy Mike is. So, you're very fortunate to have these musicians.
Absolutely. I want to also give a shout out to Kevin Kelly. So Kevin is a mixing engineer extraordinaire, and he has mixed all of my albums, but he also, on the last two, he played bass, which, he is a kick-ass bass player. And he plays other instruments. He's just very low key about it. A lot of people don't even know some of the instruments.
They know now.
Now they know. But, in the beginning of the pandemic, when I was working on these walls, I said to Kevin, but Kevin, I can't go into Mike's studio to record. I've got to get set up from home. I've got nothing. And bless Kevin and his patience. I bought a small mixing board, USB mixing board, a great microphone for recording. And I had to get familiar with recording software because I had to do it all,
Sure.
for my tracks. And I had never recorded from home before. And Kevin, with his patience and, telling me what I needed to do to get set up and how to handle things, it was just, we ran some tests and off we went. But without him, I don't know if I could have done it. Yep. So, there's just so much that, we learn from each other. And if people aren't afraid to speak up, and that's a really good thing. And like Mike, when I said to Mike, I have all these songs I really want to record. I can't come into your studio. Kevin, has told me he can talk me through getting set up. And I will never forget Mike's response. He said, without any hesitation, Linda, we'll make it work.
That's right. That's Mike's attitude. Absolutely. Mike Nugent from Melts in Your Ears Studio, which you will find, because he would never put it out there. You will find in the chapter marks, Mike Nugent, great guy.
Yeah.
So I got to understand this. You belt out 4 or 5 albums in 5 years, right? Okay.
Yeah, 4.
That's a lot of freaking work. That's a lot for the people who don't know behind the scenes. That's tons of hours to do it. And then you got to tell people about it and get it out to radio stations and all that. And you've been successul with that.
Yeah.
Are you going to take a vacation? I mean,
yeah, I need to chill. I actually, now I just want to go out and play. I'm a songwriter, so I keep writing. But even right now, I'm just coming after like a month or whatever. I'm coming back to my writing, but I need to like have some downtime. And I can't record another album just yet. It's going to be a couple years.
So one of your first outings, was it Peter Hansen? You did
Songwriters of Long Island. I did a half-hour set.
Country Corner, right?
Yes, in East Setauket on Long Island. That was a lot of fun. I've
spoken to Peter. I'm going to try to get him on the podcast, but a really nice guy. And he's of that generosity of putting a spotlight on singer-songwriters. And the one thing for anybody who's listening, and you have friends that have establishments that have live music, man, tell them to get original singer-songwriters out there to support them. I was at Katie's of Smithtown last night. That's their main focus. And I'm telling you, I got exposed to music that I was just like, holy mackerel. I would never get to see this. And that's where we got to be. And you know what? Back to the independent artists and social justice and the issues that we need to hear. You're not going to get that in a tribute band, no offense, or a cover song. We may get it in a cover song if it can relate to what's happening. But the independent artists are our neighbors and our friends and our relatives who speak truth that we need to hear. And like with your music, Linda, it's a feather that knocks you off your chair. It really is. Hey, I do want to get into, let's talk about the third song you brought to the table, Honey, We're Gonna Fly, and we'll take a listen to that.
Okay. Yeah. So I wrote Honey, We're Gonna Fly as an uplifting, let's look beyond the pandemic, or when we can get our arms around having a life again. I mean, COVID's not leaving us. So, we just need to figure out ways to live with it, which I think folks are starting to do.
Sure.
And I really wrote it as a love song of, hey, we are going to meet, we're going to be able to meet in person. And then it kind of morphed into, this song really is about not being afraid to step out into the world with the person you love and coming out from the shadows to do that. And that's what Honey, We're Gonna Fly is all about.
Wonderful. All right, everybody, let's take a listen. We'll be right back after the song. Enjoy. Hey, everybody, we are back. We just heard, Honey, We're Gonna Fly. What a great testament to go out and let's live our lives, and get out there and devil may care, So,
but be safe, be smart about it.
But be safe. Yeah. Wear a mask if you're immune compromised, just don't be a dope,
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
As my father told me as a young man, hey, don't be a jerk.
Words to live by.
Words to live by, yeah. So very excited. July 1st, you got the album coming out, and the album is Shake It Loose Today. Let me tell you, everybody, I heard a preview of the album. You're going to want to go wherever it's streamed, wherever and buy it. Don't just listen to it. Buy it, put it in your library, because you're going to want to listen when you're offline. So
thanks, Steve. Yeah.
Sure. So
I had fun making that.
That's great. And you need a vacation. I'm just telling you. This is a friend telling a friend. So tell me about the couple things you got coming up. And
yeah. So as you said, I just did the Songwriters of Long Island thing with Peter Hansen. And then on July 9th, I am going to be playing the Northport Farmers Market. So for people here on the North Shore of Long Island, if you are around and want to come down, that's always a really nice, very relaxed. I kind of sit in a really beautiful space with the harbor behind me and facing the vendors.
Yeah. Northport Village is great. Very dog friendly village as well.
Exactly. And there's like nice benches to sit, and it's I've played there many times in the past, pre-pandemic. And so I'm just starting to ramp up, with summer coming and landing other events. On the 16th of July, I'm involved with the Huntington Folk Festival in Heckscher Park.
Oh, great.
In the afternoon at 1:00, there is going to be it's an all day and night event. And I have been asked to share my music in a tribute to Lois Morton, who passed away early in the pandemic. And Lois was a wonderful songwriter and a great entertainer. So I will be sharing during that. And then I am deciding what else I would like to do and going after it. All of my New England tour that I was about to do right as the pandemic hit, that was going to be in April, May, and June, got canceled, of course. And those folks have been reaching out to me at like 4 different venues every year since. And I put them off. And I think I'm ready to go do those.
Hit the road. That's
exactly.
Great. Well, I tell you, Linda, I really appreciate your time today and sharing your story and especially your music. It's so important for these times and for the future. And a good friend of mine gave me some words of advice. He said, see if we can account for what's in our bank and what we own. We can never account for the time we have left. And Linda, the fact that you've given me this time today and with our audience is a true blessing. So
thanks, Steve. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. This was great. And, thank you for having me. I really, that means a lot.
All right. We'll have you back. So everybody have a great time, and we'll see you soon. Be well.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace. Thanks so much for listening. Please rate, review, and comment on the show. We really love to hear from you. And call our listener line at 631-800-3579. Again, thanks so much. Be well.